Welcome back to USA Car Reviews, the channel where we dive deep into the history, performance, and culture behind America's most iconic rides. Today, we've got something truly special on the table. We're talking about a machine that has gasoline pumping through its veins, a car that represents pure raw muscle, stripped-down performance, and unapologetic attitude. This is the 1970 Chevy Nova 454, a car that cemented itself as one of the great street warriors of its era. If you love classic muscle cars that were built to dominate the quarter mile and turn heads on Main Street, then buckle up, because this story is for you. When most people think about Chevy's heavy hitters in 1970, they usually bring up the Chevelle SS 454 or maybe the Camaro Z28. Those cars were household names. But Chevrolet had another weapon, something a little more unassuming, a little smaller, and in some ways, even more dangerous. That was the Chevy Nova. The Nova started out as a compact, an affordable car for families and daily driving, but by the late 1960s, it had transformed into a legitimate muscle car platform. And when Chevrolet decided to drop their biggest, baddest engine into this lightweight body, the result was a monster that scared even the most confident drivers at the drag strip. Now, the 1970 Nova 454 was the perfect example of what muscle cars were all about, taking the biggest engine available and squeezing it into the smallest body possible. The 454 cubic inch big block V8 was already a legend, especially in the Chevelle SS and later in the Corvette. But when you put that same power plant into the Nova, which was hundreds of pounds lighter, the power-to-weight ratio suddenly made this car one of the most lethal street machines of its time. The 454 engine itself came in a couple of flavors back in 1970. The LS5 version made around 360 horsepower, while the legendary LS6 was rated at 450 horsepower from the factory. And let's be honest, we all know those numbers were underrated. In reality, the LS6 was probably pushing well over 500 horses, and with a few basic upgrades, you could easily squeeze out even more. Imagine a 3,300-pound car with that kind of firepower under the hood. It's no wonder the Nova 454 became a favorite among street racers. One of the things that made the Nova so appealing was its simplicity. Unlike the Chevelle or the Corvette, which could come loaded with luxury options, the Nova was a bare-bones machine. You didn't get a lot of frills, and honestly, you didn't need them. This was a car designed to do one thing and do it well: go fast. The interior was straightforward, no nonsense. Bench seats were common, though you could option for buckets if you wanted. The dash layout was simple, gauges were easy to read, and the car felt focused. It wasn't about pampering you, it was about putting the driver in control of a rocket on wheels. And let's talk about the looks for a second. The 1970 Nova had a clean, aggressive style. It wasn't flashy, but it had presence. The sharp lines, the wide stance, and the aggressive front end gave it a no-nonsense personality. A lot of owners liked that it flew under the radar compared to some of the flashier muscle cars of the day. If you pulled up to a stoplight in a Chevelle SS, everybody knew what you were packing. But in a Nova, some folks might underestimate you. And that's when you hit them with all 454 cubic inches of fury and left them in the dust. That sleeper quality is part of what made the Nova so beloved in muscle car culture. Now, let's break down what it felt like to actually drive one of these beasts. When you fired up that big block 454, the car came alive with a rumble that you could feel in your chest. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration, energy, and raw muscle. As you pressed the gas pedal, the torque hit instantly, pushing you back in your seat and making the rear tires fight for traction. With the right gearing and tires, the Nova 454 could run quarter-mile times in the low 13s straight off the showroom floor, and with a few mods, high 11s or even faster weren't out of reach. Handling-wise, let's be honest, this wasn't a sports car. The Nova was designed to go fast in a straight line. It had decent suspension for its time, and if you added aftermarket upgrades you could make it corner a bit better, but stock form. It was all about drag racing. Braking, too, wasn't exactly modern by today's standards. But back then, none of that mattered. If you were driving a Nova 454, you weren't worried about carving canyons. You were worried about lining up against the guy next to you, hearing the flag drop, and blasting off down the strip. It's important to mention just how affordable this car was compared to the competition. That was another reason the Nova 454 earned so much respect. You could walk into a Chevrolet dealership and pick up one of these cars for less than a Chevelle SS or a Corvette. That meant young guys, blue-collar workers, and everyday enthusiasts could get their hands on serious horsepower without breaking the bank. It made the Nova a people's muscle car, and that accessibility is a big part of why it became such a legend. Of course, as with many muscle cars, the 1970 Nova 454's reign didn't last forever. By the mid-1970s, emissions regulations, insurance costs, and the oil crisis started to choke out big block engines. Horsepower numbers dropped, cars got heavier, and the golden age of muscle began to fade. But that brief moment in 1970, when Chevy was putting its most powerful engine into one of its lightest bodies, remains frozen in time as one of the high points of American performance history. Today, finding a genuine 1970 Nova SS with the 454 engine is like striking gold. They're rare, they're valuable, and they're cherished by collectors and enthusiasts. Prices have skyrocketed, with pristine examples fetching six figures at auctions. But it's not just about the money, it's about the story, the legacy, the feeling of what that car represented. It was the ultimate sleeper, the underdog that could take down giants, the kind of car that made legends on the street and at the track. And here's the thing that makes the Nova 454 so timeless. Even decades later, people still love to build them, restore them, and race them. You'll find Novas at car shows, drag strips, and cruise nights across the country. Some keep them stock, preserving that original big block power, while others go wild, dropping in modern LS engines, turbo setups, or pro touring suspensions. No matter what route they take, the Nova remains one of the most respected platforms in the muscle car world. So why does the 1970 Chevy Nova 454 matter so much, even today? It's because this car embodies everything that made muscle cars great. It was affordable, it was powerful, it was simple, and it was fun. It didn't need to be fancy, it just needed to be fast. And it delivered that in spades. For many, it represents a time when performance wasn't just for the rich or for the elite. It was for anyone with a dream, a little cash, and the guts to hit the gas pedal. That's why, here at USA Car Reviews, we can't help but admire the Nova 454. It's not just a car, it's a piece of American culture, a symbol of an era when horsepower ruled the streets. And even though the automotive world has changed a lot since 1970, the legend of the Nova lives on. Every time someone fires one up, every time one roars down the strip, it's keeping that spirit alive. If you ever get the chance to see one in person, or even better, drive one, don't pass it up, because the 1970 Chevy Nova 454 isn't just a car, it's an experience. It's the sound, the smell of burning rubber, the feeling of raw torque hitting your chest, and the rush of knowing you're behind the wheel of one of the most iconic machines ever built. And that wraps up today's deep dive. If you enjoyed this look at the legendary Nova 454, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to USA Car Reviews, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown of America's greatest muscle machines. Drop a comment below and tell us, if you could take either a 1970 Chevelle SS 454 or a 1970 Nova 454, which one are you choosing and why? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. And as always, keep your foot on the gas and your eyes on the road.